Good evening and welcome to the January 27, 2019 meeting of the Shawnee City Council. I'd ask that you please silence your electronic devices at this time. I am Mayor Michelle Bisser. I'll be chairing this meeting. I'll do a roll call at this time. Councilmember Thomas. Councilmember Zimmerman. Present. Councilmember Jenkins. Present. Councilmember Kinley. Present. Councilmember Larson-Bonnell. Present. Councilmember Knappen is absent. Councilmember Constance. Present. Councilmember Chaffee. Present. Thank you. Please stand join us for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States. Thank you. Next, I'll explain our procedures for public input. During the meeting, I'll offer the opportunity for public input. If you'd like to speak to the council at any of those times, please come forward to the microphone. I'll ask you to state your name and address for the record, and then you may offer your comment. So that members of the audience can hear your comments, I would ask that you speak directly into the microphone. By policy, comments are limited to 5 minutes. No person may speak more than twice to any one agenda item. Any comments related to city business are permitted. Comments and remarks that are personal, impertinent, or slanderous are not permitted. Disruptive acts are not permitted. After you're finished, please sign the form on the podium to ensure we have an accurate record of your name and address. In addition, while I won't do a roll call vote on every vote, I will state council members' names who vote minority, so our listening audience will have a clear and accurate record of the vote. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Does anyone have an item they would like to remove from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is mayor's items. I did not think I had anything tonight, and I saw somebody that reminded me after last meeting, we were approached at the dais by a couple of individuals that said they were having a very hard time hearing us speak in the audience with the speaker, the phone line thing on, and then the following day I also received some phone calls. So I would just ask that the council maybe consider bringing this back to the committee. It's a policy that was approved without my signature. I still am concerned about it, but the person on the phone, we have absolutely no way of verifying that the person on the phone is the person that the residents voted in to sit in the seat. And now if it is hindering the listening audience of the people that are present and that are listening online, I think that is a big issue, especially with transparency. And so I would ask for the council to reconsider that policy. But it's one of the things I received complaints. The next item is appointments. Item number 1 is to consider appointments and reappointments to the Visit Shawnee Advisory Committee, MARC Solid Waste Management Council, Shawnee Economic Development Council, and the Kansas and Missouri Metropolitan Culture District Bi-State Commission. I'm recommending various appointments and reappointments. One motion will approve the entire slate as presented. The recommended action is to consider approving the slate of candidates as presented. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
And discussed the fact that of the 4 people that went to the National League of Cities meeting in November, 2 of them knew ahead of time that they were not going to be returning to the council come January. And then I notice on the list of appointments this name. And the only thing I've got to say is that since last May or June or whatever it was, Mr. Sandifer knew that he was not going to be on the council come January. And yet he allowed the city to spend $2,500 to send him to San Antonio in November. I think this was an abuse. Legally, he was still a council member. Legally, he had a right to go to the meeting. Cannot fault that. but was it morally correct? Knowing that less than 2 months later he'd be gone, and anything that he might have learned at this meeting would actually become useless because he would not be partaking in any actions of the city council. And for him to be appointed to that position on the Visit Shawnee Council, my personal opinion, everybody has opinions, you know, there's an old saying about how most of them usually stink anyway. But my personal opinion is I think that this is an insult to the people of Shawnee. That this man spent money, city money, knowing that it was basically useless and of no consequence. And I would like to see his name pulled from the list of the appointments and voted on individually as a separate item, if possible. Now, he may come up, he may feign indignation that how could somebody say something nasty or wrong about this. I'm not making up stories. I'm not coming up with conjectures. I'm making a statement of fact. This money was spent in November or dispersed after that, knowing that it was almost useless money. So that's not a conjecture. That's not hypothetical. That's not some far-off thing out there in outer space. The fact is right there, and you're seeing it right now in the expense report. That's all I've got to say. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Wait. Just give me 1 second for that second. If the council member chooses to do that, obviously we would honor it, but I would like to give my reasoning as to why I am appointing Mrs. Vanderbilt to this committee, because this man has given more time to this city before he was ever a council member. During the entire time he was a council member, he wants to continue to give his time to the city after he's a council member. And of anybody that understands the value that volunteers bring and what we save in money, I would think it would be someone who is an active volunteer with our city. And he has put in more hours than that $2,500 will ever repay in this lifetime. Ever. Just full Shawnee days alone. He is there from before open until after close for 4 days in a row. In every single event that the city puts on. So that $2,500, that does not repay his service to the city. Mr. Meeting, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, Jim Neighbor, 10405 West 52nd Terrace. I would just like to speak and reiterate on what the mayor said. The one thing I would point out here that Mr. Sandifer has been very diligent and busy in the city for many, many years. The other thing I would point out, this takes a lot of time. If you're really active, you can do 120 or 130 things a year with your time, but everybody that is up here is more or less a volunteer. They have other jobs, other professions, and they do this. Why? Because they love their city and they want to make our city better. They make $1.07 an hour, folks. $1.07 an hour. Yet they still come up there and go through everything they have to do. And this, council, this goes for all of you. I understand I've been there, but you know, I think Mr. Sandifer also was just appointed as by the Shawnee Chamber as the Shawnee Citizen of the Year. So he has recognition from over 300 chamber organizations that go there for his service to the city, and I think he should be appointed to the Victor's Shawnee.
Anyone else from the audience that would like to speak to this item? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Tracy Thomas, 13022 West 76 Terrace in Seven Hills. I'm the one that showed Mickey how to get his GED after 30 years when he had quit.
Okay, we're not going to slanderous type of remarks. So
That was not slanderous at all, Michelle. I'm proud of it.
We don't need to talk about anyone's education or anything else. So if you want to make a statement as to why you think that you should not serve on the committee.
Great. I was going to start with the flattery, but I'll move right on to, if you can buy your way to free vacations and then serve as a volunteer. Mickey also dragged the city into the Devenbaugh lawsuit that cost us well over the $2,500. So this is not transactional appointments. And when he ran for mayor, he lied and said that I was going to widen 75th Street.
You either stop. We're not calling people liars, and we're not accusing them of being involved in lawsuits or anything else. So,
I'm just stating the facts.
well, your facts. Thank you. Any other member from the audience that come forward? All right. Does any council member want to pull a name? Seeing none, I will accept the motion.
So moved.
Second. Motion's been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion passes. If there's anyone in attendance who is appointed tonight, please stand up so we can thank you for your service to the city. Thank you very much for giving your time and talent to the city. Business from the floor. Is there anyone who has comments on an issue that is not on tonight's agenda? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Tracy Thomas, 13022 West 76 Terrace in Seven Hills. I'd like to talk about several things. Respect for an absent councilman who gave a timely announcement that he would not be attending tonight's meeting. And I think that should have been respected by the city manager. Policy statement number 7, 2A1 says agenda items, the determination of what items are presented on any agenda is made by the city manager. Doesn't say the mayor. Through the city manager, through discussion and direction made at the previous council or committee meetings. And so at the previous meeting, the mayor tabled the elections mid-sentence, mid-procedure, without so much as any nominating speech, any motion, a second, discussion by the council, or comments from the gallery. She even refused to allow multiple council members' requests at the end of the meeting to circle back, to resume discussion, and follow the law that said we would have that election 2 weeks ago, and follow the law and settle the election choice that night. It's not the mayor's purview to table something without a motion. And then for her to release Councilman Knappin's letter that's not in the public record yet, maybe someone will enter it, requesting to table the elections tonight, and put that on Shawnee Mission Post where all the council can read it.
Hey, Ms. Thomas.
Yeah.
Kurt Knappin sent that to the Shawnee Mission Post himself. They contacted me asking me about it. I did not send it to them.
I understand that. You're the one who then made the ruling on the Shawnee Mission Post that you would not table it. But it's not up to you to table things. It's up to the city manager.
I made no ruling. I stuck with what I said. At the last meeting, I said it was tabled to the next meeting. This is the next meeting. Mr. Knappin was on the phone. I asked multiple times. This is all in the minutes. Fortunately, we take verbatim minutes and we have the recording. And I asked multiple times if anybody had any other comments or anything else. Everyone sat here, nobody said anything. There was nothing else supposed to do but table it. During that time, Mr. Knappin had an opportunity to say that he wasn't going to be at the next meeting because he knew before he was elected he wasn't going to be at the next meeting. But he did not. He let us know in an email that he sent to us and the Shawnee Mission Post a few days ago. It was already stated on public record it was going to be on this agenda, and I'm not going to pull it from the agenda after the fact that it's already said it was going to be on the agenda.
But what you said at the meeting to the city manager, and the city manager is the one who makes the agenda, not you. What you said was, we want to all get along and we want you to figure this out yourselves, the 8 of you.
No, that's not what I said. We pulled the minutes. I said this is a council decision that needs to be made by the council. Never did the words, the 8 of you, come out of my mouth.
You're right, you're right.
I know.
But you scolded everyone that you need to work this out. Didn't you say something to that effect?
Yep.
Yeah. So this is kind of like a reverse of the Nancy Pelosi, where there was a big rush to have an impeachment and then string it out. Well, this is like string it out and now there's a big rush so that you don't have to break a tie. So if the city does not want so many black eyes, maybe we should follow policy statement number 7, and maybe we should not be, it sounds like it's transparent to send things to the Shawnee Mission Post or to comment to the Post, but that's not. That's really opening up discussion, and discussion is what triggers a COMA violation. And so I think that this should be tabled. And I noticed that the city now is in yet another lawsuit over Woodsonia, and it was stated, I did clarify with Councilwoman Lisa Larson-Bonnell that it was not she who participated in helping with the petitions for Woodsonia. So that would imply or infer, I never know the difference between those two words, that it was Stephanie Meyer. But we keep getting into all these lawsuits, and maybe the council and the city manager could have more training on COMA and more training on the golden factors. As for your remark just now,
Your time is up.
that we should cancel remotes because you think someone's going to fake being a councilman, that's preposterous.
Are there any other items business from the floor? Seeing none, we go to public items. Item number 1 is to conduct a public hearing to consider projects for the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report for the 2019 Community Development Block Grant CDBG funds. The CDBG program requires that a public hearing be held to provide the opportunity for citizen participation. Staff will forward the report to the Department of Housing and Urban Development after the public hearing. I'll accept a motion to conduct a public hearing.
So moved.
Motion's been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. We are now in a public hearing. This is a formal public hearing required by law. Does anyone on the council have any questions? If you have comments, you can make those too.
Thank you. I would have a couple comments. After reading the report, a couple things that kind of came out of the report to me that made me think about some options and so on. A couple of the options were, Second Charities has done a really good job of using the money and applying it toward the exact things that we really want that money to go for. And I think it would be nice if we could maybe encourage them to apply for a little more for this, but some of the ones are turning money back. And if they're doing such a great job of helping folks, it'd be kind of nice if getting a little more help to help folks. If that makes sense. So that's one of the things I wanted to bring up. The other thing I wanted to bring up is, and I brought it up at a previous council meeting, and didn't make a big deal out of it, but we're spending quite a bit of money out of the HUD grant for improving some of the roads. And they're in my ward, so I'm happy that I'm getting roads taken care of in my ward, King Road and so on. That's great, but I kind of wonder if they're really living up to what these grants are intended for, coming from HUD. It seems to be really aimed at providing assistance to low-income individuals in terms of housing, specifically, since it is the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And I was wondering, maybe it's not something I want to do tonight, but it's something I want to plant the seed on, and maybe we can talk about this more as a council and council committee, or maybe in our annual retreat or something like that. That maybe we shouldn't be spending $160,000 on a road, even though it benefits me, and I'm happy about that. Maybe it should be applied to some of the other programs, and possibly even something like assistance program for deteriorated properties, because that benefits all of Shawnee. If our houses look nice and the neighborhoods are good, and there are people out there that can hardly pay their annual property taxes, and loan try to clean it and fix it up. I know we do some of that stuff now, but maybe expanding those kind of programs and doing some stuff. So just some food for thought on that. I think that might be a direction I'd like to see us go in the future. Otherwise, everything was fine on the report. I'm not docking the report, it's fine. Just some maybe some suggestions for where we go in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I like the fact that you've always taken the opportunity to think outside the box. So I like that. Yeah.
Just to piggyback a little bit on that, I think that would be a wonderful thing for us to bring up in the future council committee agenda. One of the things I was thinking about is that we actually have a pretty good menu of options that we can provide to our residents for assistance, but I think that they're a little bit hard to access, and they're a little bit too all over the place for our community members to know that here's everything that is out there, here's everything that you might be eligible for. So I would love to see that come up in the future council committee agenda. How do we make it easier for our residents to access that?
Any other questions or comments? Anyone from the audience like to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll accept the motion to conclude the public hearing.
Move to conclude. Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Public hearing is closed. Recommended actions: consider accepting the 2019 Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report for the 2019 CDBG funds. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? Accept the motion.
Move to accept the 2018 Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report for the CDBG fund.
Motion's been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is council items. Item number 1 is the election of the 2020 council president and vice chair of the council committee positions. This item was tabled from the last city council meeting. I'd like to explain the process for tonight's meeting. I will accept a motion or self-nomination from the dais. The motion will require a second and a majority vote of the council president and voting to approve. Should the process again not result in selection, the item will be tabled for the first city council meeting in February. This process will repeat for the vice chair position. The council member makes a motion to table the item for a specific date. It will require a second and a majority vote of the council president and voting to approve. And if this event is tabled, Councilmember Quinlan, who is the senior council member, would chair all future council committee meetings until a council president is elected, whether you like it or not. I have also directed the city manager to prepare options for the council committee to review at their March meeting, including the process for selecting the council president and the overall role for that position. Some changes could be as simple as revising PS 7, which require a majority vote of the council president and voting and is effective immediately. Other changes may require revisions to the charter ordinance, which requires a 2/3 vote, 6 votes including the mayor, 2 weekly publications, and then a 60-day waiting period before it is effective. If revisions to the charter ordinance are passed, they will not go into effect until June. Does anyone on the council have any questions? I will now seek self-nominations or motions to elect the council president. Councilmember.
Is it possible to discuss this item before we go directly into the nomination process? And you put out a lot of information there in this comments, I think, it's forthcoming before we have to get into that nomination. Would that be possible to do that?
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Well, I have some comments I'd like to make on it. That's one of the comments is based upon your statement at the last meeting that you would like to see the council deal with this and come up with a solution. I think that has a lot of merit to it. So what I'd like to see us do is refer this to the council committee. If, like Tim and Sharon, those meetings a couple of times we resolve the issue, there would be a 2-part referral to the council committee. One part would be who's going to be elected as our council committee chair. But the other one would be to take a look at the charter, or PSL, which of them is going to actually try to change, and come up with a resolution to this that precludes future issues such as this. So it would be kind of a 2-part thing, and that was done and accomplished by the council committee. So we come back and referred back to council by the vote of the council committee. And therefore, it already hammered out, what it is we hope to do there, and what sort of changes we made. So it would be, we got a nice neat package of here's our process we're going to go to, and here's our nomination for the council committee chair. So it was just package delivery by UPS, I guess. That's what I'm saying. And I think that shows a lot of think there's a lot of deliberation. It shows, good management. It shows that, it's being taken seriously. It's not being done on the fly. We come back and present something that, goes all over us. And I think that, makes a lot of sense to me. I don't know if any members of the council are going to agree with that, but to me, that makes a lot of sense to do that. That'd be my suggestion.
venue to actually have open discussion that people can hear and see truly that, you know, we don't have our mayor and our other city staff present. They may be present, but it is our city council that is sitting there running this meeting and moving these things through, not through the motion of others. And if the desire is for us to collaborate and become one Shawnee, I think this is a magnificent step to support that.
Any other questions or comments? Councilor Constance?
Well, I guess, what I was going to motion before we got into the discussion was a suggestion to nominate as president of the council, Councilman Zimmerman, who did a good job serving in 2018, really led the meetings in a spirit of cooperation, who could lead those discussions about whether we do revise the policy statement. And he was also did a great job of being available when the mayor needed him for meetings. And then as appreciation for Councilman Simmons, who is a service on the council, I would like to nominate him for vice president.
Any other questions or comments or discussion from the council?
Hearing none, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt my concept of referring this back to council committee and deliberate this issue thoroughly and come back with a solution for the mayor and the rest of the city council to vote on.
But
At the earliest time possible, of course.
yeah, I think we already have a motion.
I would like to motion
Oh,
for those two
discussion.
individuals, the president and vice president.
And you did say the word.
I said motion.
Okay.
Well, I just want to make sure, I'm trying to make sure that I
I think
have.
she was going to make a motion.
Nominate.
Okay.
So,
We have that one on the table, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second, and is that for both? Or do you want to do
we
it
can do
separately?
it separately.
I have a request for a point of order on this. I had a question to the mayor and see if I can get some information here. The process for electing a council president is not one where one person nominates somebody. We developed a process where that wasn't going to close out the nomination, boom, you're right, just picking somebody and off you go, because it's kind of a ramrod deal that we're faced with right now. And that's why we changed the process in the first place, was to do those ballots, so that we would hear the nominations that came in and we vote on those nominations. We're not doing that now. We're throwing that process and just starting that. That's really not in keeping with what we're trying to do here. If we're trying to have this collegial city council, we're get together and we're going to solve these problems and stuff. This is not doing that. This is failing in that objective. So I'm pretty concerned about it, frankly. I think we're going in the wrong direction. That presented a proposal that was very, very basic. It was thoughtful. It gave everybody a chance to give all their input in here to come into a good and acceptable solution. And now we're going right back to the old method we had before we even changed to a 7 in the first place. So this is the way it used to work. Anyway, I'll make a nomination, and boom, we go right to the nomination's over. And nobody even knew who the other nomination might be. All we know is that one was nominated. So it kills all discussion, it kills everything. It's just, to me, that is a really poor way for this council to move forward.
So, we have a little guidance on if we go down the path of contingent discussing, it's a due process. Let's say that we have a committee meeting and Mr. Clinton is going to chair that meeting with the senior committee member. And let's say that in that first meeting we come to a resolution, come to a conclusion of how to get there, we get there. From a planning perspective and checking all the boxes from a legal perspective, what is the next step in how to get to any process of electing president? I don't think we want this thing out there for that matter. So, this was done explicitly legally without constituents complaining about the regulation of how it's and let's consider that. But I don't know that any else is with the end of it.
Yeah, I think in rebuttal to that, not everybody had his sense about it, but it's just, this is not something that's on a fast track. It's not something we have to do in the next night or two, otherwise the world's going to fall apart, so this council's not going to function. But Mr. Emily is our council president, and as its interim council president, life goes on as usual. There is no speed bumps, there's no glitches, we move forward and do council business. But I don't understand this, wow, we got to hurry up and get this done. That's not necessarily true. We do need to get it done, but I think we need to get it done in a very deliberative manner. And we're not doing that by what we're proposing to do with this nonsense of motion.
Before I was just putting forth my motion based on your discussed the motions of three that considered. I am also interested to hear other suggestions as well. And the reason we defaulted to this way was because current policy didn't say what to do when we were at the gridlock. It didn't have the next step in the policy that wasn't clarified in that they put together. So that's why we defaulted to where we're at now.
Idea and be inclusive and have Kurt as part of this larger conversation, and truly have real open discussion and sharing of why this person or why that person we feel is the best for that role. Not that we're against anyone, but just who we see as the best, and we do that publicly. It's not in secret, it's not behind closed doors. I think you'll have an extremely strong council coming out of that, because everyone will be able to be heard. Everyone will be present. We're not taking this jockey role of, oh, there's, 4 that will most likely vote for one person versus 3 for another. That's really not cohesion. That's not collaboration. And I don't believe for 1 minute that Kurt had the ability to be here tonight. And I know it's tearing him up, I would imagine, to not be able to participate. And once again, as Eric said, Mike can chair this by our own rules. We're out of our rules because we didn't elect him last time against our charter, but Mike is quite capable of that. And we need to move on with the city's business. We need to solve this, and I think we have an idea by Eric that would bring to fruition a good choice. But I think we have other items to discuss, and I would like to see us move forward and put this on our council committee meeting and be a council together and choose the best folks.
So I would ask though, with that being said, then if in the next committee meeting somebody's sick, so then it's not going to be discussed at that meeting, and then the next meeting somebody's kid's sick. I mean, so how long does that go on when we can't predict the attendance of the meeting? Like I said, even with this one, when it was the last one, when it was tabled to this one, the opportunity at that time was to be said, I won't be at that next meeting, and it wasn't taken. So I didn't know that. I didn't know that until you guys knew that. So I just, so then what's going to happen? Because the next committee meeting is once a month.
Right.
Mr. Jenkins.
First of all, we could have more council committee meetings if we so desire. That's what we normally schedule one a month, but we could have additional council meetings if we wish to. And secondly, because we're going to be meeting to discuss a process rather than an individual, per se, because the process is going to pretty much dictate who's going to wind up in the position. The process we agreed to. It is not quite as critical that every single member will be there. We want that, obviously. I'd like to have everybody there, and I hope everybody's there. And they probably will be, because if you look at the number of absences on this council, they're pretty limited. Most of the time, everybody's there. Most of the time. So, I think we could go through that process, go through the process, hammer out the rules of the game for our charter or for our policy statement, and then that provides us the framework within which we could select a council president. So it's kind of, that process has to come first before the rest of the thing. So, if Kurt wasn't at that, or I wasn't at that, or whatever, we have to sit here and talk about after we come up with the process, I think it'd be great to have the attorney there, of course. They help make sure we don't step on any, legal issues. But, yeah, I think we need to work through that process. And I don't think it's critical if one person is up to that.
Just want to clarify a couple of things. That this is a discussion about the process. It's not a selection or election of chair. And within the context of that, just really start my first question. If we do come up with a process, it's timing of this, it's the progression of events, how does that work from a legal perspective, so that we don't have more frogs, That's another one of those questions that I think anybody can get the answer to. I understand that it would be referred to committee then. But that is what was stated. If it goes to committee, then it would go to the committee meeting in February. March. Oh, so that we had time to discuss the process. Oh my gosh, yeah. So that. And get the research. Okay, and then back to the council. And the other thing that I heard somebody say that I want to make sure is clear is about our charter ordinance. The council president has to be elected at the council meeting. And the council committee actions or conclusions or votes are always recommendations only to the council. So you're not bound by whatever you would agree to at the council committee level. So I think that would be mid-March. Before it came back to the governing body.
No, it should be the second meeting in March, and that's pending just the policy statement and charter ordinance, and change the charter ordinance, and we got publishing it twice this day, and then depending on how that falls, and that's the council president would necessarily take the potentially, I don't know the exact calendar schedule, probably the June and potentially actually the July committee meeting.
That's assuming you don't modify it. So it needs to be covered. That would decision would be made by the council committee in those deliberations.
Correct, yeah, just depending on what you chose to change.
The one just scenario
yeah,
would be that we
the
change
charter
the charter name, we don't know, yeah.
So what would the council do if we come up with a new process and then not everyone is here to vote on the new case?
In my opinion, and as stated earlier, I think would be probably a consensus and a nomination coming out of that meeting. If we come back to the council with a nomination.
I want to make sure that we're all clear on one point, and that is that there is nothing that is stopping us from having a very robust conversation about the merits of any of us individually as council president or vice president. I keep hearing that it makes no sense to have it in this other venue. I don't actually think it makes a difference one way or the other. The reason I want to say is 100%, the very first council meeting, we need to be discussing this process. I think everybody agrees that what we've experienced has exposed the seizures, the little problem spots of the way that the current ordinance was drafted. However, we actually need somebody as council president at those meetings that can be a leader and can really facilitate the conversation about what direction we should go from a policy perspective. And this is not me commenting on Mr. Henley and his ability to do that, because I think that we can do that at a different time. But we should be having that conversation. Is the person that is going to be leading those meetings the right person to be facilitating that conversation?
It's a very important thing. Because right now, we elected the council committee, the council president, okay? And we elected a vice president. Both of those people are not here. By natural order of succession, Mike Kimling is currently the council committee president by default. So it's not like we're making some appointment up or whatever. He already is.
I'm not suggesting that we are.
Technically, he's our council president right now.
I guess I'm not sure what we gain by kicking it down the road. I say we just have a conversation about see right now. I mean, the people are here, they're together. I recognize we have one member absent, but as we said, they're going to have to make this decision. So why not put the folks out? If they're interested, share your name, let us know, talk about why, and let's vote and move on. I feel that we have a lot of important city business to conduct, and I'd like to see us in the place to do that and not waiting until potentially July to have it solidified for 30 years. So that's my suggestion.
Agree to set this on the committee council for next time. We could walk away and at our next city council meeting, have the official vote. Is that right? No? Because,
It won't go to committee till March.
but why? Why, I mean, if somebody's got to do research, my goodness, I get a packet on Thursday night to be ready for Monday. So why can't we on this Monday have the research done by Tuesday the following week? I mean, I'm a busy person too.
The packet will actually go out Thursday, so, for next week's committee meeting.
Right.
Yeah, so we'll just have a couple of days, and basically what our intent was is that we researched kind of what other cities have done. We also had a conversation about kind of what possibly the role of the council president is, and so just want to make sure that you guys have enough information to look at some options and make that determination. So.
Got it.
Mr. Kimberly and Mr. Jenkins.
I think, sorry, I think there's kind of two different issues before us tonight. One was possibly selecting an individual. I think the other was refining the process of how we get to a council president. And with my time in the council, never we had a guy like this that we couldn't eventually come up with something. So this is new ground. And Eric is right, we did change the process to PS7 then, because the way it used to be was whoever could get out the first motion to get a vote. And the problem is, maybe I like him, but maybe I like her more. And we didn't know who was even running. And so we've already, once before, refined this process, and we put a lot of time and effort in PS7 to talking about how we would break ties or who would get the first motion, but not how we would break any ties if we couldn't get a majority. And that was a weak spot in the policy statement that we have. And so I think the problem is the council as a whole has not resolved this issue. I think having a member absent does not solve the problem. And I think if we were to vote tonight, this is going to come up again in a year, then we have another council meeting, and it's put forth, and we didn't put a process in place. I think it's better for the council to have a predictable process in place that we can go and see it on paper here, that in the event this happens again, here's the steps we all agreed on. And we agree on the steps, which are then select the individual from now, as opposed to, I agree with this person, have the votes tonight, let's do it. I think that's the full president's step, but just because we happen to have the votes for the attendance Monday, that we somehow solve the problem because we didn't. And that's why I would like to see us discuss this process again. Maybe by changing PS7 it would be quicker, but the question is what we gain by kicking it down the road. We gain a better policy, one that has a procedure for breaking the tie in case you can't agree if it is a full-force citizen. That's what we gain. And I don't see what we lose if we're still going to be conducting the same business. We're still going to have our committee meetings. We're not canceling those.
Yeah, I think the comment has to be made because the situation is being forced by the nomination that's being thrown at the council. The elephant in the room, they ignore it. They know they got 4 votes right now because we know exactly what happened. It was a 4-4 split. Probably nothing a whole lot has changed between last council meeting and this council meeting. In Wisconsin, knowing that they got 4 people and we have an absent person that voted make the 4-4 split, let's ram this through while the other person isn't here. Now, if you think that's really in keeping with trying to get a council that's going to work together and not be drawing battle lines and stuff, I'm sorry, that really doesn't facilitate that at all. That's just the opposite. That's going to create rancor. That's going to create unhappiness. It's going to create frustration. It's going to cause people to want to go back to their houses and get their grindstones out and start sharpening their knives. Why are we doing this? I've offered up a really kind solution that we could all get together and be collaborative and come back with a change policy and a suitable council committee president. And everybody's ignoring that. Let's go sharpen our knives and let's look at each other. I think that's kind of ridiculous, the direction we're heading in, and I'm kind of upset about it, quite frankly. That's inappropriate. We have a way to solve this problem. It's been offered up, and everybody's saying, no, we don't want to solve the problem. We want to just ram this through. That's the result I'm getting from what I'm hearing. And I'm pretty disturbed. That's not a good way to do business on this campus. And it doesn't foster good relationships as we move forward throughout the rest of the year. So I would like everybody to think about that a little bit, because it's a pretty serious thing.
To be clear, I did not nominate myself. I nominated the person that I was up against last week, so I was doing that in a way to say, it's less confident than I do trust both of you. So both of the suggestions were not the ones that I had personally voted for last week, which was part of my thinking. I also, in looking at all of the folks up here, I thought Councilman Zimmerman would be one that really all of us could potentially work with. And that's not to say that I don't think the same is true with Mr. Jenkins and Mr. Olson now. But again, to your point, Mr. Jenkins, I did not say I would like to motion for myself. I did not say I would like to motion for Mr. Olson now. I proposed two different options, which was why I was trying to take that in the spirit of let's move forward. Because if we come to this meeting again in a month and we have 8 people, and everybody is still with the same suggestions they had to begin with, they're not going to get to a solution. So that was the spirit of my bringing those two cases up.
Point of order. Is there a motion on the table, and what is it?
The motion is for Councilman Zimmerman for president and Councilman for vice chair. Yeah, Mr. Zimmerman is president.
To the point of, I think a few council members have recommended, I would be fine with us proceeding to have nominations on paper if that is more fair and is more in line with our policy statement. That we're supposed to be doing it. And that way we could see who the nominees, all of the nominees are, unless there's going to be an opportunity for other people to nominate.
Nobody asked Mr. Kenyon if he'd be okay changing until that question.
Yeah, I would just say yes,
Nobody was asking me.
So at this point, I need clarification. If you have a motion in second, do we have to vote on a motion in third?
If you're asking me, I keep ending up with all these items. I believe the policy statement provides that if there is a main motion on the floor and it has been seconded, that item has to be addressed before there can be another motion. I know this is a significant issue with this council, and I'm likely to receive a lot of criticism either way, so if we can have just a second.
Yeah, absolutely.
For maybe Stephen and the manager now, and the mayor who is ultimately responsible to review 207. If you have that available up on the screen, Stephen, for people to see. What I stated is my recollection. I could absolutely be wrong, but I want to make sure that we're getting it correct on this.
While we're waiting, are any of the council members able to get their iPad to work with the city agenda and everything? Is it working for anyone?
Mine just came up just a minute ago. Thank God, since I got asked that question. The policy statement number 7, page 2 of 10, under items, general meeting rules and procedures. Section 3(1)A provides that only one main motion may be pending on the floor at any one time. And I understand there's a main motion pending on the floor and it has been seconded. I've forgotten who in the world else.
Does it matter that it's in violation of CS7 procedures discussing the president of the council, which is done by written nomination? So, I mean, you're having two conflicting points here, you know? One is right in its own right, one is right in its own right. So, you know, how do you resolve that? Because according to policy 7, we all write down the name of the person we're nominating on a piece of paper. They go to the city clerk. City clerk puts up on the screen, and then we move from there. We have a vote based on the 2 nominees, or 3 nominees, or however many they end up resulting.
I understand that and I respect that. I don't get to make that call under the form of government that we have. We have a mayor council form of government where the mayor decides points of order, but my first thought when you made that comment was we've already done that. We've been through that process once, to be fair.
And when we restarted it, to be fair.
That's exactly right. And it's not my business or place to say whether we go back and start the process again or whether we resume the process. I think typically people would have an understanding that you've started a process and you've tabled it to the next meeting, you're still undertaking that process. But again, like I said, my opinion is a comment, and I'm not going to decide that kind of way.
Those ballots to the info decision, those ballots submitted prior to the meeting, they're not at the meeting, right? If they're prior to the meeting. I know they fill them out here, but don't they have to self-nominate?
Yes.
Prior to the meeting?
They have to self-nominate a week before the meeting to the city clerk, and then she prepares the ballots to put in the packet and brings the printed copies to the meeting where they fill them out.
And it should be pointed out that neither one of those council people that were nominated lost. Okay? Their nomination still stands until such time as that's resolved.
Right, so,
the process.
I think we just down the road. I'm going to withdraw my second. And I'm going to make a motion that we proceed with filming is the interim council chair. And let's get this figured out. And if it takes some further eyes, let's get this fixed entrance to all. That frankly is just kind of ridiculous. So, we're at this moment with the body council, and I'm convinced that by the end of this year, we're going to be a really good example of how a council can function very well across the spectrum of reality. We're going to get away from the rest of them.
I'm sorry. I think that Councilmember Constance would need to withdraw her first motion in order to put it back on the floor.
Okay, so.
That's a dice for lack of a second.
True.
I think there were 2 seconds.
I would leave the second as well. Well, I think we need to vote on a person and know who is interested. The folks that were already interested are here. I really never got to hear from Mr. Vincent and Dennis Rushman and why they felt that they were the right ones. So my preference would be to hear from those who are interested and allow them to stay in and allow us to vote. I think we can still handle the process that we're talking about once we get this started. I think we can vote for council president and for business and still talk about the at any council meeting. So, Councilor Rushman, do you want to
why you want the position, or do you no longer want the position, or?
You know, when I joined the city council, I pledged to be open and responsive to both my fellow council members and to our constituents. And if you know me at all, you know that if you contact me, you will get a response from me. It doesn't mean that I'm going to agree with you, but you will get a response with me, and it will always be a respectful response. I use those same I use the same approach when I'm working with our council members. I'm very active on my social media pages so that our residents know what's going on with the city. And on these platforms, I also respond to questions, and I believe that open dialogue is key. I do, and I hope that the people that have served with me before really believe strongly in building relationships. That means building relationships even with people that I wouldn't normally agree with. And in fact, I think that those are often the more valuable relationships to have. As for being interested in council president, I feel like our council and our city are going through a major time of transition. We now not only have several new members, but we also have an opportunity to set the course for how Shawnee will look and feel for the next 20 plus years through our strategic visioning sessions. And really, for anybody that knows me, council president is not about power. It's not an ego trip. I just want to serve the city as best I can. And it happens to be that I do have a lot of experience helping groups navigate through change. And that's exactly where we're at right now. I have made the commitment to everyone, especially now that we've been through this process, that we have some serious housekeeping to do. Our first meeting, and it could even be more than our first meeting with regards to this process. Again, the process absolutely needs to be fixed. What happened at last week's meeting cannot continue on in future years. That would be one of the first things that would be on the council agenda. But really, what my commitment to you is to lead the whole council and not just factions of the council. I will plan to solicit items for the council committee meetings on a regular basis from everybody. Last year, I know that we chose to set major issues to be on the council agenda, and that did work up to the point that it did make it a little bit more inflexible than I would prefer for getting items agended. But really, I think that we can work well together. I feel very confident that I can lead this group to a place where we can all be one council, and we can all get along, and we can all have a shared vision for what is best for the city. Thank you.
Well, actually, we do still have a first and second, because I guess Councilmember Zimmerman and Councilmember Brunel both said second. So we still have a live motion.
But then the motion was for Mr. Zimmerman.
Yes.
Okay. It seems like that should just be withdrawn, and if we're going to justify each person.
I'm happy to remove my motion for Councilman Zimmerman. I was just bringing it back to the point that Mr. Jenkins said that the other two haven't met. So I did want to hear from those two. So I'm removing my motion for Mr. Zimmerman.
Mr. Jenkins?
Well, there's a number of reasons, and I think some of them are readily apparent. I've served this city for 26 years, over 26 years. I think the city manager can more of that. We have all protection all over longer during the 25-year thing, and we get to get further look at. But I've served the city in some capacity or another for over 26 years. I've been on the city council for 4 years, almost 5 years actually, since we changed the election cycle. Come April, it'll be 5 years. There are a wide variety of leadership experiences. Working for the Federal Emergency Management Agency, I completely led the effort from the United States government to rebuild cities that were torn up from various disasters, earthquakes, tornadoes, floods, whatever the particular issue was at that time that I got deployed to take care of. I was Regional Interagency Steering Committee Chair. That means I chaired all the community, all the federal agencies that were brought to bear on the disaster. It was a large number. If you want to try 20-something different federal agencies on the same page. Good luck. It's hurting cats, let me tell you. It's quite a job. And after I could finish that job up, I became the regional interagency steering, not the regional, the radiological emergency preparedness steering committee chair, which was the radiological community, the ones that handle the nuclear power plants, and the ones that will handle broken arrows if we have a nuclear weapon that goes down, and those types of things, and bringing all those agencies together, like the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the Emergency Preparedness, the Environmental Protection Agency, and all these various agencies that respond to those types of disasters, DOD and so on. I brought all those people to the table, and we made incredible progress as a community, as a federal community, and was given a lot of accolades for that effort. So the leadership is there. Many of you know I'm a retired colonel in the United States Army Reserve. I've commanded units. I've commanded Special Forces A teams. I've commanded military police battalions. I've commanded 900 men. On some of these disasters, I led over 2,000 people on those disasters. I have a lot of background and experience there, guys. It really is. And I'd like to provide some of that leadership and guidance on this council. And I think I can bring a lot of foresight, a lot of background skills and abilities to the table. And I don't think they should be overlooked. Kind of interestingly, in the last election, I ran again for this seat, and I won with 61% of the vote. I think the people in Ward 2 were happy with me. I don't think anybody had a vote like that. I know Ms. Bonnell barely squeaked by and won by about 60, 70 votes. What around Ward 3? Not to knock that, she won. But the fact of the matter is, I'm talking about an endorsement. I'm talking about an endorsement from my people that I serve. I think that says a lot. It's a pretty significant thing when the people you serve appreciate that and acknowledge that. Okay. Also, I'm kind of concerned that Ward 2 doesn't get a lot of representation from the council presidency. I don't know when the last time a Ward 2 person was council president. Maybe somebody could help me here. I don't know when it was. I've been on the council for almost 5 years, and it hadn't been since I was here. So I don't know who it was before that. But it's been pretty slim pickings for the folks there in Eastern Shawnee. And there has been some thought kicked around on these new processes and procedures we're talking about having a rotating sort of situation to the council president so that each ward would get some representation at least once every 4 years. And some of the things that they want to bring to the table from that ward frankly heard. I think there's a lot of compelling reasons why I would make a darn good council president. Leadership, talk about ability to work people together. I've done that a lot. So when I keep hearing all these things like people have done that, well, I've done that too, and I've done it in spades. And I've got some pretty significant ideas that I'd like to implement and move the city forward. And work on some things that I'm concerned about in the city right now as far as some transparency issues. I've got issues with contracting process we do in this community. I'd like to take a look at those. I'd like to take a look at some of those we run our meetings here because I think some of those things we do right now really aren't as inclusive as I'd like them to be. I'd like to really encourage some citizen participation, more citizen participation in this community. We've done some stuff. I think the thing we did with the roads was great. I'd like to see more of that kind of thing. We had a committee of our citizens get together and prioritize our road repair program and our overlay and so on that we do every year. I think that was great. I'd like to see more of that kind of stuff. So I've got just a large number of ideas I'd like to start pushing forward. And it's damn hard to do when you can't get it on the agenda. Because I brought a number of things before to this council to put on the agenda, and they were pretty much ignored. So I'd like to move forward. I'd like to get some things done. I think if you could be pretty darn progressive, I think we can get our community moving. And that's why I think I'd be a really good council president.
So do I have a new motion?
I'd like to make, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that we refer the committee for further discussion of the process before we go on individual.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. So we'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Thomas?
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmerman?
Yes.
Councilmember Jenkins?
Aye.
Councilmember Keenan?
Aye.
Councilmember Larson Bonero? Aye. Councilmember Conklin? No. Councilmember Chowdhury?
Nay.
4-3, motion passes. Next item on the agenda is from the Planning Commission meeting of January 6, 2020. Item number 1 is to consider approval of SUP 022001, a special use permit to Seafood Island for live music and entertainment located at 10810 West 75th Street.
Planning Commission recommended 11-0. The governing body approved the special use permit subject to the conditions in the staff report. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? Accept the motion.
Second.
Motion's been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 2 is to consider approval of SGP 0320, a special use permit for New City Church Early Learning Academy to operate a childcare facility located at 7230 Quivira. Planning Commission recommended 11-0. The governing body approved the special use permit subject to conditions of the staff report. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? Accept the motion.
Second.
Motion's been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 3 is to consider ordinance number 3314, approving the adoption of the City of Shawnee Comprehensive Plan 2020 edition. On January 6, 2020, Planning Commission recommended 11-0. The governing body approved the text and map amendments to create new land use designations specific to downtown. This item was also reviewed by the Shawnee Downtown Partnership, and the Planning Commission held a public hearing on the matter. An ordinance is required. Lauren Grasshoff, neighborhood planner, will make a brief presentation.
All right, good evening. I will try to keep it brief, but give you enough background and detail about the amendments so that you guys can make a decision this evening. All right, so I'll just go over the background, kind of what is a comprehensive plan, really briefly, the framework for Shawnee's comprehensive plan, reasons for the proposed amendments that we are hearing tonight, a little bit about the prior discussion at the Shawnee Downtown Partnership meetings, as well as the Planning Commission hearings, and then review the proposed amendments to Chapter 5 and Chapter 8, and these are both text and map amendments, and then finally with the Planning Commission's recommendation. So a comprehensive plan, as defined by the American Planning Association, is a adopted official statement of the legislative body of a local government that sets forth goals, policies, and guidelines intended to direct the present and future physical, social, and economic development that occurs within its planning jurisdiction. This is a big picture guide, and as the Kansas state statute defines, the purpose is to ensure a coordinated and harmonious development or redevelopment which will best provide for the health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, and general welfare, as well as wise and efficient expenditure of public funds. Shawnee's comprehensive plan has been amended several times throughout the years, but it is based on analysis of data relating to general trends in growth, development, and information concerning the needs and desires of the community. It is actually broken into 9 different chapters, but for the purpose of tonight's discussion, we'll be looking at Chapter 5, the Land Use Guide, and Chapter 8, the Street Standards, Circulation, and Transit Plan. The Chapter 5 Land Use Guide establishes the general land use policies and establishes the land use designations and what we call the Land Use Guide map. What you see on the screen is the overall view of Shawnee with those land use designations. It's generally a 20-year outlook for development and redevelopment within the city, and it provides broad designations for land use. It is not zoning, so that means it doesn't prescribe height, building setbacks, specific permitted uses, or bulk regulations. Oftentimes, multiple zoning districts can work and coincide within a land use designation. And changes to the future land use map do not change any of the existing zoning, and they don't make any existing uses non-conforming. This is periodically reviewed, typically annually, by community development staff and can be amended by the Planning Commission and City Council.
I don't sit on that.
There's not one on that one.
Okay.
And so what's the autumn report?
And so yellow is, and purple is, and red is?
So those are actually within your following slides, all the designations, but we're specifically talking about downtown.
Okay.
So that map was just a kind of visual.
Thank you.
For Chapter 8, this is the Street Standard Circulation Plan and Transit Plan. This is the primary goals and purpose of this chapter is to establish a unified street network, ensure sufficient right-of-way for primarily our arterial and collector street network, and proper alignment of those streets. It coordinates street development within the city with surrounding communities and our regional transportation systems, and also allows us to prioritize improvements that are sponsored and funded by the city. Again, we are talking about amendments specific to chapters 5 and 8 tonight. I will go through we'll actually go through the text amendments first for chapter 5, review the land use map changes we're proposing, and then go through the chapter 8 changes. These are all specific to downtown Shawnee, and the purpose behind the proposed amendments is really because these sections of the comprehensive plan have not been updated since 2005. Obviously, that means that a lot of our visions and goals and investment that the city has made over the years is not consistent with what's currently in the comprehensive plan. The sort of impetus to this was waiting for all of our different visioning studies that have been undertaken since 2005 with Shawnee Mission Parkway Visioning Study, Community Connections Neiman Road, the Downtown Action Plan Update, several zoning district amendments, Neiman Road reallocation of right-of-way study, as well as the actual improvements, development of the Neiman Road Design Guidelines, and some changes to some additional zoning regulations within the district. These amendments basically include and draw from those visioning and recommendations within those studies and combine it into one place as one resource and tool for people potentially looking to develop or redevelop within downtown. Real briefly, the prior discussions included the Shawnee Downtown Partnership provided the initial guidance for these amendments. They really wanted to have the land use policies that are flexible, that allow for a variety of different use types within one lot and adjacent to each other, increase commercial and residential densities, and be contextually cognizant. They were reviewed at several meetings throughout the last year. And then as well, the Planning Commission provided additional guidance in October and November. A public hearing was held on December 16th, and that hearing was actually continued to January because based on resident feedback, we had some changes and wanted to make sure that everyone was able to review those changes after the first public hearing. So in January, the Planning Commission approved a resolution to adopt the proposed amendments, and a copy of the resolution is in your packet, as well as the meeting minutes.
Just a comment, it should be noted for the record as well that the city met with the South Springs Association, and I know these changes with them in detail, so I just wanted, it didn't show here anyway. I just wanted everybody to know that. Carol, I see you out there, you're at the meeting, but yeah, so we did get citizen input from you. One of the areas most potentially affected in the downtown area, so just FYI.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so the Chapter 5, one of the first amendments we added in the general land use policies was creating the new designation of the town square mixed use land use designation. This is essentially where we provide the definitions for our land use designations and highlights, again, mixed use, that could be horizontal or vertical, increased commercial and residential densities. It's expected that some of the redevelopment will likely be smaller scale just due to the fact that we don't have a lot of green fields or lots that are larger than 3 acres. So it is potentially more feasible to densify using vertical integration of land uses and building mass and scale. Also, aka intensity, should be sensitive to surrounding properties, especially single-family residential. And again, flexibility is paramount. Within the land use guide, there's specifically a downtown section. Again, this hasn't been updated since 2005, so all of the existing downtown text we are proposing to remove, and have included new information with several different sections, including a background with a brief history of all the activities, and Shawnee being the historic core of Shawnee, as well as the references to the prior studies and implementation activities. The goals and objectives were established again with many years of studies and visioning and citizen participation, and includes implementation of complete streets, create more live, work, and play opportunities, as well as increased placemaking and other unique components of the area. The following section includes implementation, so how the town square mixed use could be actually strategies for how the two actionable items to achieve the broad goals and objectives. Again, I kind of repeat myself here, but we really want to emphasize what's expected and appropriate for downtown. Increased density, which can be done by reduced setbacks, vertical massing, and infill, excuse me. Increased residential units that are also diverse as far as prices and actual stock types, resident forms. Flexibility of uses, multimodal connectivity, contextually sensitive, especially transitions to single family, which can be done with building orientation, and then also attention to the historic character of the corridor. Incorporation of city amenities, so for example, the streetscape elements, the multi-purpose path that is going along Neiman, as well as different roadside amenities, and it furthermore differentiates between Johnson Drive within the town square and Neiman Road. I've sort of highlighted what's Johnson Drive is what I'm calling the central core. This calls for more consistency with the historic townscape, no or limited access on Johnson Drive, and a focus on reuse and building renovation versus kind of tear down, start anew. This would be a focal point for density, walkable entertainment, specialty retail, civic and restaurant uses within Johnson Drive corridor, and development of residential immediately behind the commercial corridor. Neiman Road, potentially we could see some of the larger lot development, looking for office, service, restaurant, or retail as your primary users, and with this potential larger lot redevelopment, we'd also be encouraging higher density. And then finally, with the implementation activities, we looked at, as Mr. Jenkins mentioned, got feedback that the residents wanted clarity for what development or redevelopment would look like in the residential areas. So we created a neighborhood redevelopment guide to provide direction for the expected types and forms. And I'll go over those specifically here in a minute when we look at the map amendments. So these are the Chapter 5 Land Use Guide map amendments. Over on the left-hand side of your screen is the current designations, and over on the right-hand side is the proposed designations. I'll go through first just looking at the town square mixed-use designation, and then kind of sort it out area by area as well. But as you can see on the left-hand side, what we currently have really doesn't reflect what we want to see downtown. It's calling for office service uses, and what is the red, the commercial designation, is really more consistent with a commercial highway, large lot, big box development, which is not what we want to see downtown, or has been recommended for downtown. So most of the Neiman and Johnson corridors have been transitioned and proposing to this new designation with the town square mixed use. And this could allow for commercial-only development. This could allow for commercial with residential above, or even residential if it's a lot behind Neiman or Johnson corridors. But again, this is not zoning, but it matches what most of the town square zoning that's already in place, with in some areas some expansion. For example, over at Flint and southwest corner of Flint and Johnson Drive, what is currently several commercial properties that front Johnson Drive, we are proposing to change that to the town square mixed use. And then also extending it further east along Johnson Drive beyond Blue Jacket all over to Goddard. The kind of second broad changes we made is really just highlighting the new parks and open spaces with all the Neiman Now improvements that have been made. So we are looking at over on the east side of Neiman, just south of Old Shawnee Pizza. That's the new roadside amenity that will be with the pavilion. Going southeast along Roger Road, that's essentially just the trail connection that we made with the Neiman South project. And then the future Trail Scout Park on Shawnee Mission Parkway, which is currently under construction. And then on the west side of Old Shawnee Pizza, just south of Sushi Mito, that's the additional roadside amenity. So essentially just reflecting the city purchase and use of those properties. The next slide, this shows kind of portions of the redevelopment guide, so I'll go through, kind of explain that within the residential areas, but just over on the west side of Neiman, around 57th between Barton and Flint, changing that area to high-density residential. We see this area as relatively probably likely to redevelop sooner than later with Wonder Scope leaving, and it does lend itself to residential development off the primary thoroughfares there. Over on the east side of Johnson, north of Neiman, is actually what we call the Goddard Heights neighborhood. This neighborhood is within our neighborhood focus program, and the overall vision for that program is to maintain sustainable neighborhoods through collaborative efforts to renew existing resources while at the same time taking advantage of new opportunities to address the changing community. As described in their action plan that was developed with the residents and city staff, the key physical assets which they want to maintain and improve upon are accessibility to services, amenities, and primary transportation corridors, mature trees, and affordable and diverse housing stock. So the recommendations that we've made with this redevelopment guide really plays onto that and then also seeks to protect those assets. A lot of this area that's outlined with the white dash and the hash with the A mark already is duplex or multifamily units. It has the greatest concentration of those unit types within those areas, and it's consistent saying that it makes sense to continue those patterns with the mixed density residential development. More dense development would be closer to your Johnson Drive and Neiman corridors, and then less intensity as you go east or north towards some of the larger lots, single family, that's standard R1 zoning lots. So there are recommendations within these redevelopment guides of certain development forms or densities that are appropriate, mostly calling for anywhere between 5 and 10 dwelling units an acre. This is again consistent with these areas that already have around 3 to 4 dwelling units an acre, so even one more lot would push them into the medium or mixed density residential designation that could look like several different types of development. Could be 4 to 6 unit attached single family, could be 2 to 3 story multifamily or some variation of these, as well as maybe an accessory dwelling unit, or potentially development of just another single-family smaller lot development. And then I did just want to point out here, there is some significant underdevelopment as you go north of 56 Terrace to about Sharon Lane. This area is specifically highlighted in the redevelopment guide as what would be appropriate for that area that we see potentially probably a easy opportunity for redevelopment, and I say that easily because I don't hold the purse strings. So, all right. Then moving on, just south of Johnson Drive, we've got two of those neighborhood designations within this area. Over on the west side, we're calling this Southwest Neiman area. It doesn't have an official neighborhood name, but again, we're just looking at what would be appropriate, more dense as you are adjacent to existing commercial uses or even multifamily that's already existing to the north, and then downplaying the density as you head west of Flint Street, as you move closer to the cemetery that's over there, more close to somewhere around 5 dwelling units an acre. Over on the east side, we have the Trail Springs neighborhood. This is also in the Neighborhood Focus Program. Some of their amenities and assets that they want to maintain and improve upon, again, are accessibility to services, amenities, and transportation corridors. It's historic significance, mature trees, and affordable and diverse housing stock. This actually has one of the more diverse housing density within the general area. It's approximately 43% of the units in this neighborhood are duplexes or multifamily. So we think it would be consistent to continue to add to the diversity with looking at what is the Stag Spring redevelopment and the area that's changing to high density residential, and then Roger Road, making that more of a transition area from commercial and possibly the live work project at the Neiman Catalyst site, with maybe somewhere around 10 units an acre on the west side of Roger Road, and then being sensitive to a single family to the east. On the east side of Roger Road, looking somewhere around 5 dwelling units an acre. And we actually are calling for less density on the south side of 62nd Street, with removing that high density residential designation and changing that to, again, this mixed density. And this actually kind of cleans up some of the land use designations that were part of the Shawnee Mission Parkway redevelopment within recent years. And then also within that text, and just to kind of wrap that up, we provided corresponding zoning designation recommendations. That way people, if they are looking to redevelop, what sort of broad land use fits, and then within that, how that could be implemented, and what might be appropriate for you all to make zoning decisions on. So those are included within the text. And then finally, the Chapter 8 recommendations are pretty short and sweet. We are proposing to remove the existing Neiman Road section of the issues and recommendations. Again, this was out of date. It was talking about doing a road diet. We are just wrapping that project up. So we took the recommendations and visions from the Community Connection Study and the Neiman Road reallocation of right-of-way documents for this text. Then looks at future improvements should reduce access points on Neiman, locating parking and internal circulation behind buildings, aligning driveways to reduce traffic conflicts, and then continue with multimodal accommodations and connectivity. And lastly, part of the Chapter 8 is the circulation plan. Again, this looks at arterial and collector streets, alignment, right-of-way, things like that. We also had feedback from the Trail Springs neighborhood, which this is located in, removing the Ballantyne Street realignment, which is what you see on the left-hand side of the screen, and then it's just not shown on the proposed circulation plan. With this amendment, we no longer desire to seek rerouting of Ballantyne Street. And lastly, the recommendation by the Planning Commission was to, they approved a resolution to adopt the proposed comprehensive plan amendments to chapters 5 and 8, and recommended the governing body pass an ordinance to approve the amendments for inclusion in the city's comprehensive plan. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Lauren. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Okay, does anyone have any other? I'm sorry.
Just a quick comment. Thank you for the presentation. Very well thought out process. It's like a tremendous improvement.
Thank you.
I like the different, it makes it very easy to visualize.
Yeah.
Jeff?
I would second that. Thank you. When reading through this, when we got our packet, just got really excited about seeing what we want for downtown and just seeing it spelled out in this cohesive plan. And I think, the sensitivities to the neighborhoods and respecting the uniqueness of those neighborhoods, but it really just got me excited, like, let's make this happen. And so thank you to the Planning Commission and the Downtown Partnership and city staff. And I think this is really exciting.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Tracy Thomas, 13022 West 76 Terrace. Great presentation, thank you. I'm concerned continually about inadequate parking downtown. We've seen a couple of projects go in, and at the Planning Commission, Mr. Busby kind of reminded me of Jack LaLanne, people just need to walk further, which is not my observation of how people actually live. So I don't think we have enough parking for the McLean's Market that's coming in. And there was an issue about inadequate parking for Mr. Tubasing's project. So I'm just not sure about that. My other question, representing everybody that I read about on Nextdoor, is people that I know are against roundabouts. And so we don't want to see roundabouts. We don't want to see lane narrowing. And then my final question was, does any of this about the comprehensive plan, would it, if it goes into effect, would it be different from what Woodsonia was approved on that's now in a current lawsuit? So that's my question. Any answers?
Can you say your question? I don't know if we really want to speculate.
So we just got into it. We just got sued by Woodsonia, by Austin Homes, which is Larry Prabe. And one of the issues was about density. So is the recommended density for that area, if in this new plan, would that be different from what was approved by the council in December?
I don't remember any change that area. I mean, is there any change in that area? I didn't think so.
Okay.
I'm Carol Mundy. I live at 6040 Ballantyne over in Trail Springs. And I had a question I should have asked Lauren a long time ago. Where do you get the 43% that are duplexes or apartments in Trail Springs? Is that based on the number of people in those kind of places or the buildings?
We look at the building types. So basically we look at address points and if they are, what type of unit they're associated with.
Wow. Because I live there and I sure don't see those. I'll have to go down every street. The other thing I wanted to say is I want to really thank all of you that have met with us and listened to our you're not going to do that, and talking to us about what the words mean. And Lauren's incredible ability to talk about that stuff. Oh my gosh. Eric has been willing to meet with us, and Doug and you guys, it's really nice to be in this city. So you guys are on a good bunch.
You're a pleasure to work with this week.
Thank you. I was going to tell you that.
Anyone else from the audience have any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I will recommend action to consider passing ordinance number 3313.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is staff items. Item number 1 is to consider ordinance number 3315, establishing the city's capital improvement fund. Staff is proposing designating 5 city funds as capital improvement funds to allow for the investment of idle funds in accordance with state law and ordinances required. Recommended actions to consider approving ordinance number 3315. Is anyone on the council have any questions? Anyone? Yes, it's Thomas.
See, I apologize, my stuff right here.
One of the memo,
We got the special, yeah.
Any other questions or comments, please? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'll accept the motion.
Second.
Motion's been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 2 is to consider resolution number 1901, approving the Region L multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. Cities participating jurisdiction in the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000, the Federal Emergency Management Agency requires all jurisdictions to adopt the plan. A resolution is required. Recommended action is to consider adopting resolution number 1901. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Mr. Lincoln.
I have a question, but I was hoping to get a look at that plan before we published it. I had talked to the folks that were writing the plan. I thought I was going to share that with them before we got to this point. I've had over 30 years experience in listening to those kind of things, so I thought it might be useful to
So, and I apologize, we included a link and there's a hard copy in the council conference room.
copy. I talked to them about that. We went in the back of the room.
Yeah, and this is, I'll let Matt Epperson respond. This is a little bit different, I think, than the plan that we were referencing. This is more the regional plan, but I'll let.
Yeah, Matt Epperson. So this plan is a plan that our Region L, the Kansas Homeland Security Region L, which includes Johnson County, Wyandotte, and Leavenworth. This is not our local emergency operations plan, which is actually what we had talked about before, Mr. Jenkins. So this plan is a plan that has actually already been approved by FEMA and the Board of County Commissioners. And really all this does is requires us to pass a resolution, and by us passing that resolution, we will then be able to, if Homeland Security grant funding becomes available, we would be able to apply. That is a requirement. It was done in conjunction with every jurisdiction in the county, all 3 counties, and we had a outside contractor come in to help write it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from you? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? Accept the motion?
So moved.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 3 is to consider contract number 2020-005 interlocal agreement with Johnson County for county-assisted road system funding related to the Plum Road project from Midland to South City limits, project number 3497. This project from the city's capital improvement program. City was awarded CARS funding for the reimbursement of 50% of all construction and engineering costs up to $1,375,000. An agreement with Johnson County is required. The recommended action is to consider approving and authorizing the mayor to sign the contract as approved by the city attorney. Does anyone on the council have any questions?
Just over $3 million is what we have.
Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? Seeing none, I will accept the motion.
Second.
Motion's been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 4 is consider contract number 2020-006 with Walker Properties LLC for the joint use and access of identified portions of 6,000 yards of road, Tract A, Neiman Middle Plat, related to the Neiman Road Corridor Middle Drainage Improvements Project number 3424. Part of the Neiman Middle project on Neiman Road and Roger Road included an off-street amenity and additional parking adjacent to Old Shawnee Pizza. A joint access and use agreement is required. Recommended actions: consider approving and authorizing the mayor to sign the contract as approved by the city attorney. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? Accept the motion. Motion's been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 5 is to consider resolution number 1902 authorizing the issuance of general obligations bonds for the purchase of a fire truck with appropriate firefighting equipment for Fire Station 72 in the amount not to exceed $780,000. On January 13, 2020, governing body authorized the purchase of firefighting equipment, including a fire truck for Fire Station 72 located at 5840 Winter Road without general obligation bonds. Resolution is required to authorize the issuance of bonds. Recommended actions: consider adopting resolution number 1902. Does anyone on the council have any questions?
Just a quick question. I know the rates are really great on bonds and loans right now. Just kind of curious what kind of rate we're looking at. Do we have any information on that? Good. I'm glad we got you to say that.
That's all right. Jeff White isn't here tonight. I'm sorry, Don Cobby, Finance Director. Jeff White's not here tonight, but I think our all-in cost was like 2.2% for the last bond issuance, and actually rates right now are a little better. We had a long discussion a couple weeks ago when we were planning out what debt we were going to do this year. And obviously, the more we could do right now that we know we're going to spend, we're trying to get that done while rates are still good, anticipating with the election and other things that there may be a change in the market a little bit later in the year. So, but I think when we originally told you about this, we were going to lease purchase this fire truck, but since we have the bonds we need to do for the street lights, it made more sense to put them in there and help share those costs of issuance and some of those fixed costs. So it felt like this was a better deal.
Thank you. I appreciate you doing that. I'd like for the people in the audience to hear that kind of stuff because we need an idea of spending. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? Accept the motion. Motion's been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 6 is to consider authorizing the LED streetlight conversion adopted resolution number 1903, authorizing the future issuance of general obligation bonds for streetlight purchase and streetlight conversion to LED in the amount not to exceed $4,205,000. On October 14, 2019, the governing body approved the purchase of approximately 2,000 streetlights from Evergreen Metro Inc., formerly KCP&L. Directed staff to research and facilitate converting them to LED. Resolution is required to authorize the use of general obligation bonds to fund the project. There are 2 recommended actions to consider. First recommended action is to consider authorizing staff to facilitate the LED streetlight conversion of the newly acquired streetlights to be managed through Facility Conservation Improvement Program. Does anyone on the council have any questions?
Just comment, not really a question, but this observation, there was an article in the paper just this past week about several of our sister communities doing the same thing, and in the process realizing that significant savings in operation and utility expenses. So I think this is a really good program. And as I recall, I think our city manager spent a considerable amount of time handling this.
And the assistant city manager.
Yeah, and the assistant. So my thanks to both for their having the.
Yeah, I just wanted to get into the Hagen store for a little bit. They did a great job on this. I just wanted Nolan to share with us the initial price tag on this before we got to this one.
Well, this is a little bit different. This is kind of on the streetlight conversion process. The original purchase price, they started at about $5.5 million.
And that was not including the LED conversion. So that was just for the streetlights. Just like everybody knows that we brought that down several $1 million. So it was a good job done by all. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'll accept the motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Second recommended action is consider adopting resolution number 1903. Does anyone want to talk about any questions or
To, a required flood
We're on the same one.
Flood.
We're still on the lights. We haven't-
plain permit, we're not on the flood
That's our
permit.
recommendation two. That's what we
Oh,
haven't done.
sorry, I'm out of line. I'm ahead of myself. Flood plain permit, I'm about.
So I'll be ready to recognize you next.
Okay, great.
All right. Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? Will accept a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion's been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 7 is to consider approving and revised project budget related to the 75th and Martindale Bridge Replacement Project number 3455. On December 10th, 2019, the governing body approved the construction engineering contract for the project. The required floodplain permit was not included in the original budget of $350,000. The revised budget for the project is $353,164.40. The recommended action is to consider approving the revised project. Councilmember Thomas.
Oh, I don't have anything. No, I'm kidding. No, and it's really just a point. And when we look at something that's going to be required to have a floodplain permit, how come it's coming up later? How are we not being holistic?
Well, that's really our intent to bring this back to you, because essentially we could have paid for that. I believe the permit was $5,000, and so they could have put that under kind of professional services and then just had more of a construction repair budget. So we're trying to encompass the total project budget within this one line item, so that's why we're kind of bringing it back to you, actually to kind of make sure that it is kind of a transparent kind of total project all-in cost. So really just kind of a cleanup matter. This was an emergency bridge repair that we had to do, and so that's why it's kind of coming back to you, just making a cleanup purpose.
That's helpful, thanks.
Any other questions? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? Accept the motion?
So moved.
Second. Please state your name and address for the record. And we do have a motion and a second on the floor.
Tracy Thomas, 13022 West 76 Terrace. Something to think about in the future is where I live in Seven Hills, where our private lake has been commandeered for use as a floodplain detention pond. And the state is charging my homes association for these plans and surveys and proof that our lake can now be forced to contain the water so it's not after a big storm. And the water comes from Lenexa, by the way, but Seven Hills Lake is in Shawnee, but we're supposed to hold that water, which potentially floods our yards, and we have to pay the state for all these surveys. And in fact, they even may want to require us to raise how deep the lake could be. And that's not fair. We didn't sign on for that. There was no Blackfish Parkway. There were no homes to the west of Richards Road. And so at some point in the future, I would love for the council to help the Homes Association that we would still enjoy the private use of the lake for recreation, but the fact that we're being forced to bear this water and these expenses, and that the city of Shawnee has not ever cleaned out the creek, or as some people would call it, the crick, just west of where 75th Street goes down the hill and turns into Blackfish Parkway right at Rogers. So there's a creek that is full of debris, and that creates more of a flooding issue. So that's just something I would want to ask the council to help us with. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No. Okay. We already have a motion and second.
Hey, Mayor, sorry, can I get you to repeat who made and seconded it?
So Lindsay, I think.
I motioned.
You motioned.
Okay.
I motioned it. She seconded.
Back, okay.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is miscellaneous items. Item number 1 is to ratify the supplemental claims for January 27, 2020 in the amount of $5,933,081.10. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to comment on this item? Accept the motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Miscellaneous council items. Does anyone on the council have an item they would like to discuss?
Yes.
Mr. Jenkins?
I'd just like to do some sort of follow-up to the comments just made by the public concerning that retention fund, retention lake. I'm not really sure why that's being pushed under the homeowner association to pay the upkeep costs on that. It seems kind of odd. Could we get some more information on that? I think maybe our next ought to be involved with that, so a lot of sort of coming from, maybe there may be some relief for these homeowners. That just doesn't seem quite right. Something doesn't smell right on this. So, can we have our engineer guys take a look at that and come back to us, just give us the information basically on what we stand with that, if there's any options here, is there something that we can do to provide relief for the homeowners in that subdivision, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I can't really speak to that one in particular. I don't know. I just know, past experience in other, HOAs have had issues that something with the water, it's supposed to be paying for that subdivision, and so they're responsible for removing the silt.
Right, when it's their subdivision, but when they start with other people's water,
oh, yeah.
now, wait a minute, there'll be at least a cost sharing or something going on.
Yeah, no, we should definitely look, I couldn't speak to that one. I just know past experience, they were responsible for keeping it dredged out, so.
If the engineer guys could give us just some background on that, and if anything can or cannot be done, that'd be great. Thanks.
Any other council items? Ms. Duffy?
I just have something fun to end with. It's called the Great Kindness Challenge, and it's the last week in January, so it's the 27th through the 31st, and kindness. There's checklists that the students do in schools, but there's also family ones that anybody can go to the Kindness Challenge website and download, and in the spirit of kindness. And just to kind of piggyback on that, I know reading our meeting last time, there was a lot of focus on what we didn't get done. We just got a lot done. Just to remind ourselves and everybody else, yes, there are some things that we still need to resolve, but
I like the kindness. So that's actually my topic for this year's Miracle Day students. So how would they promote kindness throughout the city? So, okay. Any other council items?
I got one more. I'll make it quick. Great job to all the people driving the snowplows this week. The roads were passable early, and thank you so much. That's a long, long night when you're out there driving. You did a great job, so thank you. Except for Jenkins' yard. Did you get out of your drive?
Did you call someone about that? All right, if there's no other items, I'll accept a motion to adjourn. So moved. Motion's been made, seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you.